When Germans are asked what they really think about Americans, a lot of them will say that they think Americans are very friendly, but also a bit superficial. But does that mean that Germans are unfriendly but deep? America's got Germans and we are four of them. My name is Annie and my husband, my two kids and we moved from Cologne, Germany to Boston, Massachusetts in July 2021, and I'm so happy you stopped by to join us for a little while on this crazy journey. In my today's video, I will talk about American small talk and why it's not that easy for a German to get used to that. Before I get started, I would just like to mention that I will talk a lot about stereotypes today. So, of course, when I will talk about the German or the American, it doesn't mean that we are all the same. And of course, I will share my personal experience. So if you feel that you don't agree with what I'm saying, or maybe you do agree, please feel free to leave me a comment, because that way we can all learn from each other. So I have to admit that one thing I really had to get used to when I first came to the US was that chit-chat between perfect strangers is nothing unusual. And in fact, I mean, if you leave the house, there's no way that you will not talk to a stranger that day. It already starts with everyone asking you, "Hi, how are you doing today?" or "How is it going?" And that translates into "Wie geht's dir" in German, but we as Germans, we use that phrase a little differently. In the US, "How are you doing" is part of saying hello. So when someone is asking you that question, they definitely don't want an honest or detailed answer to that question. And you would most likely reply something like, "I'm fine, what about you? I'm great, what about yourself?" And you would also say that even if you don't feel that way. Whereas when you ask a German how he's doing, you imply that you care and that you would really like to know how that person is feeling. And you will most likely get a very detailed answer, and you also have to be prepared that that person might even complain to you a bit, like, "You know, I had a really bad day at work and my boss asked me to do that project I really hate and whatever. I cannot wait for Friday." Although I would like to mention that Germans wouldn't give the same answer to everyone. So let's say my boss is asking me how I'm doing and I didn't sleep well last night, then I will say something like, "Thanks for asking, I'm okay," or maybe "I'm a bit tired today, but I'm fine." But when a close friend is asking me, of course I will say something like, "You know, I didn't sleep well because I got into a fight with my husband." So in general, you can say the closer the person is to you, the more details and a more honest answer you will get. But does that mean that Americans never want to know how anyone is doing? No. So that's definitely not the case. Of course, if an American is asking a friend or a family member, they of course would like to know how that person is doing. However, they might not complain as much as Germans do. Talking about Germans complaining a lot, I was thinking about it the other day, and I know maybe it sounds a bit strange, but I was thinking maybe Germans complain that much to show the other person that they want to be close to that person, as usually Germans do not share personal information with strangers, and if you do, it actually means that you care or you trust that person. So maybe it's a kind of a hidden sign, but I'm not 100% sure about my theory. So if you're German, just let me know what you think about that. Another difference I noticed is that Americans like to compliment each other a lot more than Germans do, and that's actually something I still have to get used to. For instance, I went to the playground the other day, and of course, after a little while, I was talking to a stranger, and that is something I can already handle, so hey. But after a while, she was asking me, hey, how many kids do you have? And I said, I have 2. And she was like, wow, you look great. And in that moment, I wasn't 100% sure if she really meant it or if she just said it to keep the conversation going. So yeah, that is still something that confuses me a bit. By the way, fun fact about Germans and complimenting each other. I think that there is even a cultural difference within Germany and a difference in how likely it is that a German will compliment you. So in the south of Germany, specifically in Baden-Württemberg, there is even a saying, and I apologize in advance because I'm sure I will pronounce it totally wrong. But anyways, so the saying is, "Nett geschimpft ist klart genug," and it basically translates into not being yelled at is braced enough. But that's actually sometimes misleading for Germans from other parts of Germany as well. I remember that one meeting we had, and there was this external consultant, and he was from the south of Germany. And his job was basically to attend the meeting and afterwards let us know how we did. So when the meeting was over, we asked him, hey, what do you think? And he said, well, it wasn't that bad. And there was this awkward silence. And then I said, guys, remember, he's from the south, so if he's saying it wasn't that bad, it actually means we did a great job. And everybody was laughing. And that is something I would also like to mention. So everyone was laughing, including that guy. So Germans actually usually don't have an issue with laughing about themselves. And I just wanted to mention that because I also heard a lot of times that Germans do not have any humor at all. And I think that's a kind of humor, isn't it? So sometimes small talk can already end after saying, hi, how are you doing? And then both person will just keep going. But in other cases, this can also be a starting point to have a more deeper conversation if you feel like having one. For instance, I always talk to my neighbor when I run into him about his weekend, and he's telling me what he did, I'm sharing what we did. And I also know where my cashier for my favorite grocery store is originally from and that she has 2 kids. Just to compare that to Germany. So let's say you would go to the same grocery store for a year every day. The cashier would still act like she has never seen you before. But on the other hand, I figured that Germans also do something which is a bit weird now that I'm thinking about it. So when Germans enter a waiting room at a doctor's office, and the waiting room is fully packed with strangers, they will enter the room and they will say, Guten Tag or hello, but nothing else, just Guten Tag. And then they will sit down, wait for their appointment, and when they leave, they will say goodbye, and everyone will say goodbye, so auf Wiedersehen. And now thinking about it, it is a bit strange, isn't it? Now, I would like to mention a very positive aspect that comes with Americans, or let's say with an expat family living in America, and that is that we have been already invited for a couple of barbecues, even though we are just here for a little more than 2 months. And my son has been to 3 birthday parties, and it's just so easy to connect with people. And that is something I really, really love. I mean, it doesn't mean that everyone is a close friend, but it makes it so much easier to feel home and get to know people. But I also would like to say that, yeah, it is harder to get to know a German or to get close to a German, but I can assure you, once you're a friend with a German, that one will most likely be the most cherished and loyal friend you can ever ask for. And that friend might stay there for the rest of your life. And how hard or easy it is to get close to a German, I think also depends on what part of Germany that German is from. And that's just based on my personal experience and my personal opinion. But I have also lived in Stuttgart for a while, and Stuttgart is in the south of Germany. And I remember that one party I've been invited to, and I didn't know anyone except of the person who invited me. And I was standing there, and actually no one was talking to me. It was so weird, and I felt so uncomfortable, even though I am German. But that was actually different from what I'm used to. And I'm not saying that everyone in the south of Germany is like that. And I also had great parties, and I met people who were very open. But, you know, they are most likely a bit more hard to crack open. I guess this also applies to the US, because the other day I met someone at the playground, and she told me that she's originally not from Boston and that she's actually struggling to get used to people from the Boston area, as they are not as friendly as she's used to. And she actually thinks sometimes that people from Boston are a bit rude. So if you're American, I would really like to know what you think about it, and I would also like to know what states are known for being very friendly and what states are known for being not as friendly. I think you can say, as we are from a part of Germany where people are perceived as very friendly and open in a German way, and Boston is most likely known for people who are not as friendly in an American way, I think it made it a lot more easy for us to transition, and I don't feel that the cultural difference is like huge, you know? So actually it made things a bit easier for us. I also have to say that I start to enjoy doing small talk, and I actually love that everyone is usually very positive, even though I still struggle to understand what they really mean, but I think it's just a matter of time until I also figure that out. I also wish that Germans would be a little bit more positive sometimes and would complain less, and I mean, me included, especially in times of COVID. I mean, I know that we all have bad days and things are not always great, but focusing a little bit more on the positive would help us all, you know, to get through. And with that being said, that's the end of my today's video. Please share your thoughts and experience in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and auf Wiedersehen.